Croeso, good evening and welcome to Does Stress Make You Fat or Not? I think I should have titled it Does Stress Make You Fat or Not, because when I was stressed when I was younger, it made me skinny, and as I've got older, yeah, it makes me fatter. But hey, okay, so each week we do a different talk on different things, and hopefully we cover some subjects that make you think. So before I get started, what I'd like to do is to check that A, you can hear me. Hi, Jenny. B, that I'm loud and clear. And if you are on, please say hello and good evening to everybody else who's in the cafe, because it makes a difference, both to Facebook, which, as you've all finding out, Facebook does so many little tweaks and changes. Can't keep up with it. Hi, Dennis. Hi. Hi, Nia. Hi, Neris. Hi, Jill. Oh, we're all here. Stress makes me have itchy hands. Interesting. Stress makes you do lots of things. Okay, so I'd like to make sure that most people are on. Hiya, Carol. I would like to think that most people are on before I get going on this one. And if you've been in the cafe before, you know there will be one of my talks on mental health and well-being, really based on my own life experiences. And if you've been following me of late, you will know I have had some serious stress in my life. And I'm going to talk a little bit about me. Not because I hate listen to me, but I think more so you realise I am human. How are we all? Good evening. So if you see everybody saying hello, remember you can like their comments if you want to say hello back, or you can reply to their comments. And I know that we've got quite a few friends on here, which is quite nice, and we've got quite a few people who I've introduced in real life who are in the cafe who didn't know that they were both here at the same time. All right, so this talk on stress, I probably do every single cafe. And it was based around the time when I got completely stressed out and I couldn't work out what was going on. That was back in the early 90s. And following on from that, I wrote a course for fitness instructors as part of Fitness Wales about how do you manage stress with exercise and nutrition. And at the time, I wasn't really fully aware of the psychological impact of stress on your physical body. And I think this is what the talk is about here. Now, in Cafe 24 in particular, we're looking at how does nutrition make a difference to your life. All right, so it's going to be very nutrition orientated because it is Cafe 24. But we are going to touch on the brain-gut axis, as it's called. So going kind of back to Cafe Medi as well. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how does stress affect you. And I've decided that the first 3 minutes of my talk is no talking. And what I'd like to do is I would like you to take 3 minutes, I'm going to time you because I've got my watch ready, to either sit and think or write in the comments like Jill has done, or write on a piece of paper if you don't want to share, which is fair enough. I love the fact that Jill likes to share, because I know, Jill, you have a big impact on other people's lives when you share your details, because you make people realise, actually, you know, it's okay to not be okay all the time. And so your time starts now. I want you to write down times you felt really stressed and how you reacted both physically and emotionally, right? Which is why I've given you 3 minutes. Okay, your time starts now. You have 1 minute. You have 30 seconds. Okay, so your time is up. Now, what I'm hoping is that you either sat there and went like, oh my God, I remember being really stressed because of a massive life event. So you can see Jill has written the death of a mum. You can see how Hazel had to look after her sister. You know, those kind of things are like major life events which kind of transform your life. Okay, much like I've been through in recent weeks. And then some of you might think like, well, actually my stress was just I had too much work, or I was lonely, or, you know, and so you can have stress in a different way where stress is not a major event, but stress is like an accumulation of small things. And I don't know whether you've seen that advert recently about Alzheimer's, and it says about keeping your cup full. Now, the reason why it's talking about keeping your cup full is looking at your hippocampus, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But your hippocampus is a store of things that you can nurture within your body. Keep having a glitch on my thing here, where you can nurture within your body so that when you come to times of stress, your cup is full. And so even though you're taking down your levels, you can manage. And I'm going to use myself as this starting point because having had a period of stress, I realised I need to have some armour in my armoury. And I've been so lucky because I've had serious stress since well, I would say since like before Christmas. I have had a period of now 6 weeks of stress every single day. It's been better after this weekend, okay, but it's not diminished completely. And I would say even before that, from maybe the summer onwards, I've had underlying stress. And I think that it's only the cafe and the cafe's teaching that's allowed me to be able to operate on my everyday business and be able to still be present and to give, because I have had the hard times where I couldn't do it. So this stress lecture today is going to be looking at how do you build your armour to cope with stress. Yeah, exactly. See, exercise is going to be one of them, so don't worry. All right, so this week my husband gave me an Apple Watch for my birthday. And with an Apple Watch, you get awards if you've achieved certain things in certain times. So last week I had an award for standing on my feet for a minimum of 15 hours a day. How mad is that? And I think it was because I was so stressed, I literally could not sit still. I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was cleaning the kitchen. I was putting on the washing. I was lighting the fires. I was making breakfast for my mother. I was teaching on the cafe. I was tidying the house. I was going to work. I was making lunch for my mum. I was keeping the house warm. I was walking the dogs. I was doing the logs. I was teaching in the evening. It was just like madness. Now, many of you who know me and have been to my classes can know I'm a very kind of giving person. But if you've ever done a Myers-Briggs assessment, I'm actually an introvert. Now that can kind of be a surprise for you. And so RBH stands for Rachel Beyonce Hubbard. And Beyonce is the alter ego that I use, or is a side of me that is an extrovert, when essentially I am an introvert. And the thing that stressed me out more than anything, okay, not my mother being ill, not my son going through his mental health issues, not my husband being unwell, not about the hours I stood standing up on my feet, but the fact I never had a minute to myself. That was my major stress. Because if I can have peace and quiet, I am refilled, my cup is refilled, and I can then go on and do other things. You see my vitamin box. I was just like obsessed with my nutrition because I knew that was key. And I think, yeah, my stress on my face. Jill, you're so right. Bags under my eyes. Now I have a stress thing. Can you see? So can you see those two little dots there? I hope I'm not on anybody's telly, but I have two little red dots under my eyes, okay? And they are a collection of blood vessels. But when I'm stressed, right, they kind of glow red. And I've been like wired, and felt like I had like hollow eyes where I was just like, okay, I can do this, it'd be fine. You know, it's half an hour, it's an hour, I can do this. And it has been a very, very interesting period for me to go through so much stress and to face the challenges I've faced over the past 6 weeks and not be ill. And I think, like, in the past, without the cafe, even though it's my own cafe, without the cafe, I would have been physically unwell. So I've had 2 people ill with the flu. My husband is now on antibiotics for a chest infection following flu and is having further treatment due to the fact that he's lost his, what, he can't talk, can't talk. And I'm not ill. I'm not ill. Okay, I haven't been ill at all. I've been tired. I have had an average over the past month of 5 hours and 40 minutes of sleep, which is not good because you all know that 7 hours minimum is the best. I've averaged around, apparently, looked at my Apple Watch, 36 hours of deep sleep over the past 6 weeks. And in order to keep your brain healthy, you should average 2 hours a night. So I know I'm really pushing and stretching my resilience to its edge. Thinking that people are going to die or deal with people who have died is really kind of stressful, okay? And having no space or time to yourself to think, or having your life turned upside down, is stressful as well. And I think that understanding that there are always outside forces that can come in on your life, and you have to be ready for it. So we all know about the war in Gaza, and we know about the Houthis, and you're kind of thinking, like, a war is coming. And already the NATO leaders are saying to us, you need to start stockpiling food because a war is coming, and if you're not prepared, you're going to be on the back foot. So you'll start to notice people are going to get more prepared in case there's a war. That's a horrible stress. I can't even think about it because I have a 23-year-old son who will probably be called up. But when we face periods of stress, we have to know what armour do we have in our armoury to protect ourselves as much as possible, as much as getting the food in now, getting your tins in now, getting your dried milk and your stores ready in case there are shortages, and there might well be. so that you're ready for when some kind of danger comes to you. A lot of the work that we do in cafe is based around being happy, all right, because it was called Happy Cafe or Cafe Happis. I prefer Cafe Happis. And Cafe Happis was based around nurturing your well-being in a holistic way so that you can then deal with your life, no matter what. If you're having a happy life, it's happier. If you're having a sad life, there is some balance and happiness in it. And as I've said before, Cafe 24 is all about nutrition. And we're going to cover stuff that we covered last week, because understanding how nutrition is like a cornerstone to protecting you, not only from cardiovascular disease or dementia or anything like that, but acts as a way for you to deal with stress. And I know I've looked haggard, because there are times, I can show you my watch, where 3.5 hours was the amount of sleep I was having in the night, and then having to be full on all day from 6 o'clock in the morning to 10:30 at night. It was just mad. And I don't think it's finished, to be honest with you. And so, you know, we're going to have to look at when the next cafe is because of that, because I really don't want to put myself under so much stress. And you've all been so, so kind and so understanding. So let's see if we can have a look at the ways that I've filled my cup, not in the last week, but in the last year, that has allowed me to face horrific stress in the past 6 weeks without being ill. Okay. I'm going to read this out, okay, because I've written it down beforehand, as I told you this morning, to understand the kind of adverse effect that chronic stress has on our bodies. Not only looking at the weight gain and why we have it, but how it kind of impacts on our health. To have a kind of look at that stress cycle and look at ways that we can balance both the physiological and the psychological ways of doing it. Now, we've talked about cortisol before, but cortisol is a stress hormone, okay? So chronic stress triggers the release of cortisol, and this is a hormone that is produced in your adrenal glands. So the adrenal glands sit just outside the kidneys. We absolutely need cortisol, okay, because it is like the sergeant major that gathers the troops to say, time to, fight or time to retreat. And it mobilizes our energy to do that for a quick action. What one of the things does when we talk about stockpiling is that cortisol all of a sudden influences our appetite. In particular, when you're stressed, you might have a heightened sense towards eating more sugary food and food with a higher fat content. So think about little low-level stress. You've had a bad day, you're feeling grumpy, you're lonely. We quite often will go to chocolate as a kind of an uplift, to kind of think like, I'll just have a little bit of sugar. And you kind of go with that. And overeating is very common, but it's more than just overeating. Because what also happens is it influences what's called our insulin regulation. So insulin is the hormone that balances our sugar. So if we have too much sugar in our system, insulin comes in and tries to sweep it out. When you do that on a regular basis, this is how we think we get type 2 diabetes. If you've got type 1 diabetes, it's something completely different, but you can trigger this kind of thing. It manages our blood sugar levels. Now, when it comes in, it can often dip our blood sugar down, so we're craving sugar on a regular basis throughout the day. But the disruption in the insulin levels, where you eat sugar, you have insulin, you eat sugar, you have insulin, you eat sugar, you have insulin, means that we store more fat than we would otherwise. So if you don't have that sugar high, sugar low, you store less fat. So that doesn't mean that you eat less fat, okay? So you can eat butter and cheese and whatever you like, and it doesn't stop inside your body, it just passes through. When you're stressed, what happens is that process of dealing with your food slows down and you take more of it on board. In particular, it changes where we store the fat. So it doesn't store it in the normal places, which is, pinch an inch, pinch your belly inch. It stores it internally around our heart, around our liver, and around our gut, so that we become very kind of compacted with fat. So your belly feels hard to the touch. You're not wearing trousers where the fat's spilling over the top. That's not the fat we're talking about. We're talking about the fact you can't do your trousers up because you've got so much belly fat. This type of fat is associated with what's called a metabolic disorder, which kind of leads to more problems with heart issues. Chronic stress also impacts our metabolism. So because we have this insulin resistance, we're more likely to have a lower metabolism when we're stressed than when we're happy. You might also find stress doesn't have that internal physical impact, but has this kind of mind-body impact where you look at coping mechanisms that might involve food. So you might eat more biscuits, you might kind of feel hungry all the time, even though you've just eaten. You might find that you have a craving for very high fat, high sugar foods. And this overeating tends to lead to an increase of fat during the times when we're stressed. The flip side of that is you also lose the motivation to exercise. So you might find like you can't be bothered to put your trainers on and go for a walk or go and do a class or go and do anything. All you want to do is to sit down all the time. That is not my thing. I can't sit still when I'm stressed. I got to be doing something. And I think for me, I found it difficult to talk because my mum was deaf and my voice was tired, so I had a very croaky voice, if you probably noticed over the past 2 weeks. Better this week. So motivation to exercise and eating more food tends to contribute to our weight gain. The other thing that happens when we're stressed, which we talked about before, is called CAR, which is called the cortisol awakening response, which means that when we are stressed, we have cortisol telling us it's time to get up. Come on, it's like your internal alarm clock, but it could be 3 o'clock in the morning, or it doesn't recognize when it's time to go to sleep. So you look at the clock and it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and you haven't gone to sleep yet. And that's because cortisol is an awakening response for the body. When we look at the brain-gut axis, it becomes more complex. Okay, so I'm going to talk about it quickly and then I'm going to go into a little bit more depth. So we have that gut microbiota. We've talked about it, talked about how you get some into your body with kefir and all of that, and how you feed it with fibre. But there's also a connection between your brain and the gut, and the gut microbiota signals to the brain about how your gut is feeling. Now, when you have high levels of stress, it stops the signal. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you have less gut microbiota, and it doesn't mean your brain stops working. It means that the signalling to the brain becomes disrupted during periods of chronic stress. Now, chronic means more than 6 weeks, okay? So it's essential to understand that there are many reasons why, when you're chronically stressed, why you have weight gain. You also might have already been overweight, or maybe have the genetics that mean you can put on weight quickly. So you don't have that NEAT. So do you remember I was talking about NEAT, which is non-exercise thermogenic activity thermogenesis is actually called, which means that you're a fidgeter. But that link is a real growing area of research, and although we don't quite understand how the signalling works, there are different ways that you can do it. So we can have a look at the communication. We can also have a look at the way that the gut moves. So you might notice that when you are when you're stressed, you have more bloated stomach, you have more stomach cramps, you might have more bellyache, you might have more diarrhea, you might have, you might feel full, you might feel bloated, and it's because the gut doesn't move in the same way. It doesn't secrete the right amount of hormones and enzymes to digest your food, so your food stays in your body a long time. So you might get diarrhea, you might be constipated, and you also have what's called an increase of permeability, which leads to a conditioning called leaky gut, which we're going to talk about a little bit again. So do you remember we did the talk on the vagus nerve? So we know that the vagus nerve is very affected during periods of stress. The vagus nerve, remember, is the signalling of the body. It is the main controller of everything that is going on. Are you hot? Are you cold? Are you tired? Are you sleepy? Are you happy? Are you sad? Vagus nerve is there. And so it regulates those neurotransmitters that make us, dictate our mood, and it looks at the way our metabolism works. So all of these things happen. You've got these hormonal changes. You've got then your immune system affected by all of these things that are happening. So chronic stress suppresses the immune system. I'm touching wood, okay? Because I still don't think I'm out of the woods, and I could well be ill. I'm still eating the vitamins, I still go to bed early, and I still exercise because I know these things help. But we also know that, this gut microbiota signaling can depress our immune system. If we skip meals, or we don't eat healthily, or we eat cheap rubbish food, we can suppress our immune system. The gut permeability is really interesting. So it's called a leaky gut. So I'm not sure if anybody's heard about the leaky gut. It's quite controversial, but they think that the leaky gut works like this. So you have a kind of permeability. So if you think of like the food is in your intestines, it can move in and out of the intestines, okay? So how permeable it is. And it is the lining of the small intestine, all right? So your food comes down into your stomach and it immediately goes into your small intestines. And your small intestines takes out everything it needs. Oh, we need a bit of protein, we need the fat, we need the carbohydrate, we need the hormones, we need the enzymes, we need the vitamins and minerals. And then it goes into your large intestines where it takes out the water before you get rid of it. So the leaky gut bit happens in that small intestine area. And instead of everything kind of going like, we need this, we're taking it out of the gut starts to leak everything out, okay? So as it's going through, say you've got some nice vitamins in there, the body sucks the vitamins out and goes like, yeah, we need the vitamins, we'll keep that. We need that, we'll keep that. And all you're left with then is the rubbish that you're going to get rid of. But when you have a leaky gut, instead of the body picking and choosing the bits it's going to pull out, stuff leaks out of your intestines into your abdominal cavity. And this kind of leaking can be linked to depressing the immune system, increases of bowel cancer, all different kinds of things, and they're still researching this, so it's quite challenging to explain it. But we know that the system is compromised, and leaky gut. So if you drink too much alcohol, if you eat rubbish food, so let's have a look. So we know high intake of foods such as refined sugars or processed foods contribute to leaky gut. We know that chronic stress contributes to leaky gut. We know that some medication contributes. So anything like non-inflammatories, NSAIDs or antibiotics. So, when you've had a period of antibiotics, you should really up your kefir and all of that. But also we know that certain infections can distribute that leaky gut. So there's lots of different ways you'll know if you have leaky gut. So you'll have the runs, you'll have bloating, you'll have gas, as they say, I don't know. You'll be tired, not like, I'm tired, but like fatigued, you have joint pain, you'll have skin problems, and you'll be very sensitive to certain foods. So lots of people are gluten intolerant because they've got leaky gut due to stress. Or you'll have, diverticulitis and all of these kind of things. We also know that when the substances pass through this intestinal barrier, the immune system starts to react, okay? Because it kind of goes like, hang on, you're not supposed to be outside the gut, you're supposed to be inside the gut. And they kind of go along, danger, something's happening, and they cause what's called an inflammatory response. So when you get a high level of inflammatory response, you can get IBS, you can get autoimmune disease and metabolic disorders. So the autoimmune diseases that can come from a leaky gut can be things like rheumatoid arthritis, okay, where you get inflammation and pain through the joints. You can get lupus, you can get Hashimoto's, which is like low thyroid. You can trigger type 1 diabetes, you can trigger MS, or you might trigger the more metabolic side of it, where you get type 2 diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndromes, such as the ones that affect your heart, or polycystic ovary syndrome, or either hyperthyroidism, okay, where your system goes overboard, or hyperthyroidism, where your system goes down. Now, I triggered hypothyroidism when I had all my operations. Before that, I had no symptoms at all, nothing. I had that one thing and I knew there was something wrong straight away. And an autoimmune cannot be reversed. You might be more susceptible to autoimmune. I really probably should go and get my thyroid checked following this period of stress. But it really starts to be interesting when you have chronic stress about the long-term impact it can have on your system. And I think it's really worth thinking about how you're going to do it so that you don't have this kind of leaky area. You also have what's called microbial metabolites, or metabolites, if you want to be English, which play the role in energy metabolism. So, for example, the rate that you burn fat might be disrupted because your gut bacteria that controls your metabolism stops working the same. The final thing, of course, is the neurotransmitters, which are like the hormones that dictate how we feel. And the gut bacteria in particular are responsible for the production or the creation of serotonin and GABA. Okay, so you've heard me talk about these before. So serotonin, as we know, is like the calm, chill out kind of hormone that kind of makes us feel happy, settled, at peace with the world. And GABA is really interesting because GABA affects our mood in terms of our mood level, yeah, and our stress responses. So you probably know when you're stressed, you might be a little bit more irritable, you might snap at somebody, you might be a little bit more emotional, you might cry at certain things that you wouldn't normally cry at, you might feel, I suppose, a little bit more kind of persecuted, that you feel like everybody's picking on you and everything in the world's going wrong, or you might become clumsy and you knock things over and you break things without realizing. So all of these things are stress related to the gut microbiota and affect our neurotransmitters. So understanding this kind of relationship between the stress that you're under and your gut microbiota is really key to putting you on a firm footing. So that doesn't mean your stress is going away, okay? We can't always change the stress. The stress is still there. All it does is it gives you the ability to absorb the stress a little bit more, or kind of use up your reserves so that you can weather the storm, because hopefully your stress doesn't last a long time. So what are the kind of things that we can do? And let me tell you now, it's nothing new in what I'm going to say, because everything I'm going to say I have already told you 101 times before. and I think this is the message. If you're ill, if you're overweight, if you're stressed, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, do these 3 things, or do these 4 things, and your life will be better. So they kind of are: do your nutrition, do your exercise, be social, be grateful, all of the kind of like holistic things, eat well. Forgotten, what's the other one? What have I said? Eat, sleep, exercise, be friendly, and all the different kind of things. So the kind of things that really help stress in particular is what's called an anti-inflammatory diet. And this is all down to that leaky gut. So if your gut is leaking out substances that you don't want inside your body, that you want to evacuate from your body, you need to have a diet that is rich in anti-inflammatory foods. Fruits, vegetables, fatty fish, so like mackerel, salmon, all of that, sardines, nuts and seeds, and also you want to remove any of the food that causes further inflammation, so things like sugary foods, saturated fats, processed foods. You want to increase your omega-3 fatty acids, so again, flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, fish, mackerel, anything like that. You want to be shoving that down your neck. Now, if you don't like fish, just buy cod liver oil tablets, okay? Double the dose, it won't matter. 2 herbs which work really well that I think you can probably add to most things are turmeric and ginger. Now, ginger, you can buy fresh, but you can also buy it in cubes frozen. You can just shove in any old food. You won't really notice it. But they have almost antiseptic, antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory effects. The more that they're finding out about these herbs, it is quite fascinating. So start to put in turmeric into your cooking. It's a very bitter herb, so you might want to balance it out with a teaspoon of sugar. Okay, you don't have to go overboard, but you can put in most things. Okay, turns your food yellow. All right, so trying things like curries and veggie stocks and stews. And ginger adds a little bit of heat. You can't always taste the ginger in food. You can just have that underlying heat like a bit of pepper. So I shove it in everything. There's nothing in my life I don't cook other than scrambled eggs. I don't think I put ginger in that. Then you want to think about the probiotics. So remember, the probiotics introduce more microbiota into the gut to stop it having that leaky gut sensation. and to stop it then having the inflammatory effect and causing you to have that changes in your metabolic disorders. And any kind of product that you can eat that works for you, go for it. All right. So when my mum was here, I was giving her Yakult every day. She's going, what's this? I was going, like, drink it. It's good for you. So things like kefir and sauerkraut and Greek yogurt and kimchi, anything. And if you don't like that, do what I do, take a tablet. It doesn't matter. Some people might find a gluten-free diet helps. Now, I would also counterbalance that, and I've said this before, about sometimes the way that we have so much gluten in our diet. So we have toast or cereal for breakfast, we have bread for lunch, and then we'll have pasta in the evening. So you only have the gluten once a day, and you maybe balance it out with different things like quinoa and rice, or even potatoes or sweet potatoes, anything, so you're not eating wheat every mealtime. And finally, is to just stay hydrated. We've talked about hydration before, but you need to think it from a chemical reaction, that in order for you to process things, you have to have 3 units of water for each process to happen. So if you're not drinking a lot of water, the process is slowed down and your leaky gut happens a bit more. So think about balancing your macronutrients, use that meal plan I gave you, eat plenty of fibre, limit your sugar, think about your portion control, think about where you're getting your protein from, look for low glycemic food, that means low sugar foods, and always eat the healthy fats, okay? So the fats that are in avocados and nuts and chia seeds and flax seeds, those fats really, really help you to look after your gut. On the flip side, okay, even though we've talked mainly about diet, some of the holistic things you can do is to look at meditation. That practice of kind of sitting with your thoughts and letting them happen without kind of trying to shut them away. Doing your deep breathing, which we've been practicing every single Pilates class, start and finish, we practice our breathing so that it becomes more natural, something you can apply and use in your everyday life. Movements such as we do in Pilates or standing Pilates, as well as more regular exercises where you're lifting your heart rate up, or you're doing weighted workout, or you're doing something to kind of bring you a little bit more joy into your life. Sleeping, okay, so make sure that you do everything right, that you go to bed early, you switch your electronics off, you have your room dark, you make it a bit cool so you can sleep, and you know, all of those kind of things. That we are hydrated, so maybe have a look at herbal teas, maybe chamomile tea before you go to bed, any of those things. Also look at that social connection, the way that you talk to each other on the cafe, the way that you've all been so amazingly supportive has eased my stress. I cannot tell you how much it's made a difference. It has made a huge difference to me to know that you're all thinking and caring about me, because there's nothing I can do to change what's happening to my life other than shutting the cafe. And I don't think it's good for me, and it's probably not good for you that I do that. So I've kept with the cafe and I'm making a few changes because I'm trying to listen to those social connections and say, like, instead of kind of going like, no, I can't do that, I'm working, I've kind of gone like, let me see what I can jiggle. So time management is really part of it. You know, how do you prioritise where you need to nurture? How do you set yourself kind of good, realistic goals? And how do you kind of have that creative outlet for yourself? So it's not always like, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, you know, where you have time. Like I've said, I've missed just sitting down, listening to the birds sing in the garden, or, you know, going on a walk where I'm not kind of rushing and trying to take, you know, I've got to fit it into everything. stepping back a little bit from your phone, getting out in nature, being mindful, but also having a laugh, you know? Think of things that make you giggle, watch funny films, go out with your friends. And any kind of boundaries you can set where you kind of say like, well, you know, it's really important for me that I carve a bit of time. And I think that it is just this kind of way of managing that is interesting. So Jill's put there, I can see a cafe retreat. So Jill, can I tell you, this is what causes me stress, all right? I have thought about doing a cafe retreat for so many years. You can ask Jenny. When we go away for the weekend and we do things together and then we have a nice time, we come away. The thought of planning it makes me stressed. I can do cafe. Cafe doesn't make me stressed. I was talking to my son earlier today about, because he's going through on his own journey at the moment, about how when you come to a difficult time, it focuses your mind on what's important to you and kind of work out what was really important to you and see if you can bring that into your life. And you all know about my complete meltdown in lockdown, that made me create the cafe, and I've never ever for one single minute regretted the cafe. It's the best thing I've ever done in my whole life. It's just been great. So yeah, I think a cafe retreat is coming. I've been in contact with Polly, who used to teach yoga in Aberystwyth, about going to her place. But at the moment, I've just got so many things on my plate. I have so many plates spinning. But I will do it. Just like, oh. If anybody wants to help me out, please do. Please volunteer. Okay, I've overrun time. Keeping you from your supper. I'm hoping that you might find people have written things that resonate with you, that I've said something that resonates with you. Maybe you don't want to share it, that's fine. You know, you don't have to share everything. But just to realise that we can't always stop the stress, but we can build our own resistance so that we are more able to fight and not be ill. See, I'm still touching wood because I think I'm going to be ill when I go away for Sisters Weekend, which is where my laughter comes from, okay? Because I can promise you now, I will be laughing for hours to the point where I'll have a better workout than doing Pilates. All right, I will see you all tomorrow for weighted workout because that's my other stress relief, is to lift weights. And if you found that joy in kind of beasting the weights, I'll see you and join you then. Please, please, please keep the comments open, and thank you all for being so kind and understanding. And hopefully turned a corner a little bit this week and feel much better. Take care. Noswetha.